know the feeling. The party is winding down, the music is barely audible, and you are one of the very last people left awake in a room that was packed hours earlier. Earlier in the evening, this same space offered hundreds of possible interactions. Amidst the noise and the crowds, two specific individuals sit at opposite ends of a long table, completely ignoring each other. Yet, fast forward a few hours, and these exact same strangers will be locked in intense, uninterrupted conversation. How exactly do two people shift from total invisibility to a deep connection within the exact same four walls? At 2:30 a.m., the physical environment shifts. The loud, overwhelming hum of 100 overlapping conversations drops into a stark, heavy quiet. As groups filter out toward the exits, the physical departure of the crowd acts as a systematic subtraction of social alternatives. Every time a chair is pushed back and someone leaves, the boundary of the social environment physically shrinks. It slowly narrows down until only the original two strangers remain. The utter silence and the complete removal of any other conversational options act as a forcing function. An interaction occurs now that was mathematically impossible when the room was at maximum capacity. We often romanticize moments like this. We wonder if a late-night conversation is a magical spark of destiny or simply a pragmatic reaction to having absolutely no one else left to talk to. In social psychology, specifically within the ISCO project, this exact scenario is categorized as parallel provision. It occurs when a restricted environment and a lack of other options force a social connection that didn't exist previously. This animated scatterplot shows the brain's internal logic. Nodes represent people, sizes indicate assigned social value. As the environment drains and options are deleted, the value scores of the final two individuals exponentially spike. The mind actively rebrands the remaining option as highly desirable. The internal narrative flips. The stranger across the table goes from being the person who happens to still be here to the person I actually want to talk to. The intense focus locking these two people together doesn't originate from a mutual discovery of shared traits or hobbies. It begins entirely as a forced cognitive adaptation to a severely restricted environment. Compare this hyper-focused state to the chaos of the room at 10 p.m. Earlier, giving one stranger this level of undivided attention was physically impossible because the brain was overwhelmed with alternative stimuli. Now, the physical constraint of the shared space acts as a trap for human attention. It entirely removes the paradox of choice that usually fragments our focus. This narrowing of the mind is a necessary situational mechanism. Without the overwhelming noise of options, genuine, sustained focus actually has the fertile ground it needs to take root. The environment itself acts as an invisible hand. It artificially curates an intimate interaction that the two individuals will later believe they organically chose for themselves. Now, this theory often makes people uncomfortable. If an intense, memorable conversation only takes place because of severe environmental restriction, does that make the resulting connection fake? The short answer is no. The initial trigger for the conversation is circumstantial, but that does not invalidate the emotional reality of the words exchanged. Parallel provision operates purely as a filter. It strips away the superficial distractions, the background noise, and the social anxiety that typically prevent us from looking closely at a stranger. Once the environment forces that initial interaction open, the conversation flows on its own merits. The empathy, humor, and understanding these two people discover in each other are entirely genuine. Authentic intimacy doesn't require a perfect, predestined match from the start. Often, it merely requires the artificial constraint of a closed door and a lack of exits. Look back at your own most profound relationships, your closest friends, or your partners. If you examine the exact, isolated circumstances of how you first really talked, you might notice a similar pattern. Two individuals, leaning in closely, discovering a massive shared world between them, completely surrounded by the vast, empty space that made it possible in the first place. We love to believe we actively seek out and choose our deepest connections, but more often than not, the empty room chooses them for us.